This program is rated 14 plus and may contain mature subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome to Crime Beat. I'm Anthony Robart. Tonight, after their loved ones go missing, two families are connected forever by a grisly discovery.
As I got to the pier part of the harbor, as I looked down, I could see the torso on the harbor.
Panic. Absolute panic.
I'm a plumber and I'm on site. Probably pulled back about 10 pounds, 15 pounds of it looks like flesh type of stuff.
I wasn't really sure, and the officers themselves weren't sure what they were dealing with. Later on when I saw it, I knew then.
A 45-year-old man has been arrested after a body was discovered inside an Oshawa basement apartment.
There is nothing that anyone could possibly do that would deserve such a mortifying and morbid, psychotic outcome.
After collecting bags of evidence from this house, police say they stumbled upon the DNA of another unidentified missing Oshawa teen.
So they asked you for your DNA?
Yeah.
As time went on, it just got worse.
Here's Catherine McDonald with Innocent Blood.
How long were you down at this beach?
For at least a week, because I had our PO unit, our ground search did the entire area.
And where was the torso found?
So right about 3/4 of the way up the pier.
A gruesome discovery near a popular GTA beach.
We received a call from a fisherman. Our officers confirmed that a torso was found of a female.
The disturbing details police are revealing early in the investigation.
It's still a little bit of disbelief until I actually got down to lake myself and witnessed what I saw. The officers had it all taped off at a crime scene. And as I got to the pier part of the harbor, as I looked down, I could see the torso on the harbor, kind of with 3/4 of the way down. It had been pulled out of the water and was sitting with a fishing net in the middle of the pier. We ended up following that avenue up and determined that nothing flows into the harbor, everything flows out. So we knew at that point the torso had originated somewhere in the harbor. No identifying features, no scars, no tattoos, nothing that would indicate age, height, weight, anything like that. Seeing how clean the dismemberment appeared to have been really made you think of who's responsible for this. I had a ton of theories in my head. Is it somebody with a medical background? Could it be a hunter? Possibly a butcher.
Police searched the missing persons files in hopes of identifying the torso of a female found on the shores of Lake Ontario. On that list was Rory Hache, who grew up in Oshawa, Ontario, just east of Toronto. She was 18 years old and living on her own when she went missing in August 2017.
Panic. Absolute panic.
Krisha Mildyke is Rory's godmother.
I think it was day 3, I was like, something's wrong.
She alerted Rory's mother.
Shannon was recovering from a fire. I had called Shannon and expressed my concern that I believe she hasn't been going home. And in that, I also suggested that it was time to place a missing persons report. And so Shannon had gotten down to the police station and filed a missing persons report. The missing persons report was made 2 days prior. And then the torso was found. My knees buckled. There was a moment, and then you can't even imagine. You can't imagine that.
So you put it out of your mind?
I tried.
We started getting a lot of tips from family members of missing people from all across the province, all across the country. It was maybe a couple weeks after we had submitted the torso to the Center for Forensic Sciences, that an anthropologist was able to kind of give us a parameter of what we were looking for. Between the ages of 16 and 24, female, around this weight, around this height. So it kind of narrowed down our search a little bit, but we were still awaiting a DNA. We did make attempts to develop some DNA from personal belongings of Rory. Then we went down the familiar route of going through the parents.
Durham Regional Police has identified the torso found at Oshawa Harbor in September. She had been missing since August 29.
It was 2 months. They identified the torso in Lake Ontario as being Rory's. And that is a very pivotal core moment in my life. Everything changed. The trajectory of my life, everyone's life changed.
That's when we first met.
Yep.
Right after they identified the torso,
Yep.
I came to meet with you.
Yep.
And you were, how would you describe that day as far as just, I guess, not knowing?
Trauma. That's little Rory. You know, like the whole day, I just heard her little voice, or her, you know, I could see her mannerisms, and it's just pure disbelief.
It's now a case of going through, doing a background on her, finding out where she was, who she was with, who she knew. We're hoping people would come forward with information, see why somebody would want to do this.
One of my favorite pictures. Shannon had spoiled her when she was little. She was the only girl out of the group. I love her eyes. So all of us had babies, but Shannon, of course, had the girl.
You and Rory's mother were friends, I gather. Tell me how you became godmother.
I was kind of like, you know, chosen. I think because Shannon and I were inseparable. We were best friends. We were compadres. We went through everything together, and I think it was just natural that it fell that way. And she chose me, and that was the best day of my life. Shannon had taken her to Dollarama, and they spent, you know, on crafts and whatever, and Rory had come home, and she was like, "Auntie, look what I got." And she opened it up. She goes, "Guess how much it cost?" And I said, "How much?" And she goes, $21. And it's the way she said $21. If you ever heard it, you'd never unhear it. It is the most beautiful little $21 that you've ever heard. It was known that she was experimenting with drugs, and that, you know, she was hanging out downtown.
But Rory had been seeking support at a drop-in center known as the Refuge. One of the people helping her was a youth housing worker. He was the one who alerted the family that she was missing.
Well, when we didn't see her for, you know, a period of time, we started wondering about it.
Yeah, people are upset.
Darnell Lewis has known Rory since she was 12.
I've been looking day and day. I've been praying every night, asking God for guidance to see where she is, to help her back home.
She had attended a paintballing expedition, and ever since he has not seen her, because they were going by during the day to her apartment, and it didn't look like she was going home. You know, we could track her last little bit of movements, but then there was just this moment where it just stopped.
Until someone reported seeing Rory in a park in the center of the city, a favorite place for teenagers to hang out. But investigators had few other leads.
That went on for several months until December 29th.
Communications. I'm a plumber, and I'm on site for a job. We're snaking a drain, and we probably pulled back about 10 pounds, 15 pounds of, like, it looks like flesh type of stuff, meat, and we don't know what it is. And I was talking with my boss, and he said for me to call this number.
Sorry, down the drain of what?
Of a house. It looks like flesh. We pulled out like 15 pounds, 10, 15 pounds of it.
Coming up on Crime Beat, what officers will find when they go meet the plumber. A plumber has called Durham police to report a flesh-like substance clogging the drains of a home in downtown Oshawa. We now return to Catherine McDonald with innocent blood.
What's the address, sir? It's 19 McMillan Drive.
I got notified by one of the investigators about this ongoing call in Oshawa.
And we started the stake, and we've been working at it for like 3-4 hours now, right?
Oh, okay.
And we can't get it clear, but we keep pulling back chunks of, whatever the hell it is.
I called the staff sergeant at 17 to find out what was going on, and ended up forwarding me some pictures that were taken from the house.
It's hard to describe other than it's just fleshy and muscly type of, and it was strips of it, upwards of like one piece we pulled out was like probably about 18 inches long.
So at this point, you're just getting pictures of the toilet.
What was being removed?
What did you think it was? What were you thinking as you saw these photos?
I wasn't really sure, and the officers themselves weren't sure what they were dealing with. Later on, when I saw it in person, exactly what they removed, I knew then, once seeing it in person, what it was.
Police would determine it was parts of a human body. At this point, they interviewed the occupant of the basement apartment.
Shortly after, I then became aware of they spoke with Adam.
When you heard about those utterances,
The gig's up. It's a body. And if you want to find the rest of her, she's in the freezer, and she's pretty defleshed.
A 45-year-old man has been arrested after a body was discovered inside an Oshawa basement apartment. At around 7:30 Friday night, officers were called to a home on McMillan Drive where the body of a woman was found.
and he didn't say her name. He didn't say exactly who he was talking about, right? At that point, did he?
Not during his interaction with the officers. I don't want to describe him as an intelligent person, but I've always thought of him as internet smart, very sure of himself.
So Adam, my name is Detective Short. Hello, Detective My first name's Darren. This is Detective Durego. And what's your name? Adam. Last name? Strong. Strong, okay. Just want to go over some things here with you, Adam.
Still not connecting it to Rory at that time. Is it likely going to be connected? At that point, you're thinking possibly, but until you get some sort of concrete fact or evidence to show that it was her, it was just another case to come in for.
As of right now, what I want to tell you is the charge you're going to be facing right now is indignity to a body.
I don't believe he ever mentioned her name during my interview with him. He clearly, although he denied it, was aware of police interviews. There was several times during the interview when he would do things knowing what we were trying to do. That
This girl that we've been investigating, her name's Rory. We've got a fairly extensive team working on it, and she's touched all of us. Okay, and we'd really like to help the family out, and we'd like to help her. My question to you is the person in that freezer, Rory.
I decline to answer that question.
Okay. You're saying you decline to answer, but you're shaking your head this way. Does that mean anything?
No.
at some point during the interview, I got notified of what they had found in the freezer. So I knew it was Rory, based on a tattoo. And I confronted Adam with that during the interview.
I am going to go on the assumption that that is Rory in the freezer.
Okay.
100%. I'm going to say it's her. How did you know Rory?
I'm not saying anything. I'm sorry.
Did you kill Rory?
I'm sorry, I'm not saying anything.
At that point, we had no information to suggest how Rory died. To lay the murder charge, you obviously need the evidence to suggest she was murdered. We had no cause of death.
This house where the remains were found is just over half a kilometer away from the park where Rory was last seen.
There is nothing that anyone, let alone Rory, could possibly do that would deserve such a mortifying and morbid, psychotic outcome.
Forensic investigators remain here at the house, scouring the property. Their work still not over. Why so long?
It's a big scene. Just being thorough, making sure we collect all the evidence we need.
I was really frustrated at the process of why we weren't getting a murder charge.
I'm begging you not to make murder out of him. This is not a man that deserves any recognition or fancy titles. Okay, you want to put a title to somebody, you put it to my daughter. My daughter was innocent blood. Rory was putting the right foot forward to make changes in her life.
I had a feeling because I didn't feel like it was just Rory, and something had to be holding them up.
Is there other people we should be worried about? Is there other girls out there that we should be worried about that are missing? Just the one.
Coming up on Crime Beat, are there other victims? That's after the break. "45-year-old Adam Strong has been arrested. This after plumbers discovered human remains in his basement apartment. Police now wonder if there could be more victims. We now return to innocent blood.
We had sent down maybe 8 or 9 pieces of evidence. And one of the items we had sent down was a Wyoming knife, which is a specialty hunting knife. I can remember sitting at my desk reading that report, expecting any DNA on it to have been found to have been Rory's. It's one of those moments when you have to read it again, maybe a third time to make sure you're getting it right. At that point, we realized there's another victim.
After collecting bags of evidence from this house while executing a 4-week search warrant last January, police say they stumbled upon the DNA of another unidentified missing Oshawa teen, now believed to be that of Candace Fitzpatrick, last seen in 2008, but not formally reported missing until 2010.
We now have two female DNA profiles, one confirmed to be Rory and the location of Rory in there, and now this unknown female DNA profile. When Rory was reported missing early on, they had started some Facebook sites and some other social media sites for people looking for information on her whereabouts. One of the investigators had found another site linked to a Candace Fitzpatrick, and she was a local Oshawa girl, not seen since around 2008. We had no link between Candace and Adam Strong. Quickly learned that Candace and Rory lived the same lifestyle, frequented the same places. So as a shot in the dark, we said, okay, let's take DNA from the biological parents.
I was called by Durham Police on April 30th, 2018, when they said that they couldn't tell me anything. All they said, they have DNA, unknown female DNA, at a crime scene. That's all they could tell me at the time.
So they asked you for your DNA?
Yeah.
Did you know about the torso? Did you know about Rory Hache? Did any of this?
No, none of it clicked on me. I heard of what happened with Rory. I heard about the torso and everything, but no, nothing clicked on me.
And then they arrested Adam Strong.
Right.
Around just after Christmas, 2017. Yeah. Did anything twig with you there?
No,
so you continued on with your life, and then the phone rang one day.
Yeah. It's July 9th, which was Rory's birthday. It's the day they notified me that it was a DNA match for Candace. It was devastating. It broke my heart. Destroyed me, absolutely, 100%.
Anytime you tell a family or the parents of locating their DNA in a residence, widely publicized as much as 19 McMillan has been, it's shocking to them.
I knew she was murdered then because they told me where they found it, right? Where they found Rory's remains.
But they didn't charge him with murder right away.
No.
As your oldest daughter, the girl that you love so much, how difficult was it that you thought she was going to come home one day? And as it got to 10 years, right? 10 years.
Yeah. One of my fondest memories, where we were going across the center island. She was on the railing of the boat, and she actually was scared, so she wrapped both arms around my neck and held on really tight. And I was telling her, it's okay, you're fine, don't worry about it, I got you. So then she let go, and then we were actually looking at the other side where the island is, where the boat goes in. It's probably the fondest one. I last saw her, it was Easter weekend, 2008. I went to work on the Tuesday, and there's the house where I was renting. The upstairs had like a railing looking down over the foyer, and she was up there, and I was going out the door, and I just said to her, I said, be good, I'll be home in a bit, love you, and I left. And that was the last time I saw her. She was 19.
Did you go to police?
Yeah. Well, I went in early 2008, and they said because of her lifestyle and that they can't take a missing persons report, and they can't call me because she's 18 years of age. So I went, whatever, and then went back again in 2009, got the same stupid story, but they couldn't do anything for me, and no, they didn't care. She was on the drugs at the time, but that was something that wasn't her fault. She went through something really traumatic that got her to the drugs.
Did you try and help her?
Tried everything I could, everything. I was used to her not being home for a week, 2 weeks at a time, but never longer than 2 weeks. And she would always tell me, I'll always call you, come see you, something.
Where would she go?
Downtown Oshawa, hung around down there.
So at what point did you say, oh my God, she's not coming home?
I always thought she'd come home, always. Up until even the time when I got the call from Durham Regional Police 10 years later. I still thought eventually we're going to find her. There's different stories going on. One was somebody that knew her really well said she left with her boyfriend and went out west to get her life together. And then I heard that a few more times, so that's what we thought happened to her.
Global News has learned Fitzpatrick's last known sighting by her sister was here at Oshawa's Memorial Park, the same park where Rory Hache was last seen in 2017. Police have yet to find Fitzpatrick's remains, but have executed another search warrant in an effort to find those remains. Durham police would also like to speak to anyone who helped Adam Strong tow his 18-foot boat to any body of water in the Greater Toronto area, or anyone who had contact with him from the mid-1990s until his arrest last December.
After I got the report in February with Candace's DNA, which eventually it turned out to be, it made sense to me now, what I was witnessing at the harbor, that Rory wasn't the first one.
Why did it take so long to charge him if you already had that DNA match?
We were waiting for the final report to see if they could determine the cause of death. And in November, the decision was made to lay the 2 murder charges after consulting with the Crown's office.
The Oshawa man linked to 2 missing young women whose remains and DNA were discovered in a basement apartment has now been charged with murder.
Get in, get in here, don't be such a sucker. Yay!
For Rory Hache's mother, this has been a long time coming.
What can I say? I didn't do this. This is the work of the Durham Regional Police and the Homicide Investigative Team.
Rory's family still does not know how she met Adam Strong. One of her best friends took a photo just obtained by Global News showing Rory and her friends standing here in front of this vacant lot in August 2016, where at the time the movie It was being filmed. Months after Adam Strong was arrested, the friend noticed that he is in the background of the picture. Strong worked here on the movie set as a security guard.
And I was like, wait, what? But you never imagine that it just keeps getting worse. It's just getting worse.
Coming up on Crime Beat, who is this man? And how did he cross paths with Rory and Candace? Adam Strong has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of 18-year-old Rory Hache and 19-year-old Candace Fitzpatrick. And police are about to embark on a marathon interrogation session. Now back to Catherine McDonald with Innocent Blood.
So what do we know about the accused Adam Strong? Global News has learned that he recently worked as a security guard on the set of a movie here in Oshawa, and in the past 5 years had 2 jobs at separate gas stations in Ajax. How long did he work here?
Maybe a year.
Joshua Evans worked with Strong at this gas station and says he was always friendly. Why did he leave, you know?
Reasons that he was not allowed to stay.
Did he do something?
I'm not allowed to stay.
I knew nothing about him. I didn't read about him, didn't look for my Facebook, nothing. Didn't want to know anything about him.
I wanted to know everything. I delved into his Facebook. I just stared at him for hours, just trying to reconcile. And I still couldn't. I mean, there before me was this grotesque predator.
Strong also frequented a number of Oshawa outreach centers, including the Backdoor Mission, just a few blocks from Memorial Park. Anything about him you remember in particular?
No, not really. He was a pleasant individual, he seemed to be, so quite shocking to find out.
Did you ever talk to him?
Yeah, all the time.
And what did you talk about?
Sports, just general stuff, like he was into scuba diving and different stuff like swords. I'm not into knives, so I just walked away from that when they got into the topic of knives.
Forensic investigators remain at the house of the accused, tents covering the back of the property. The family hopeful more charges will soon be laid.
And he was brought from the Central East Correctional Center to 17 Division, and that's where Detective Mitten initiated the second interview with him.
Adam, how you doing? Good, you?
Had better days.
Oh, I'm sure. Paul Mitten.
Adam's wrong.
Adam, you call me Paul today.
All right, Paul.
To speak for 11 hours. I'm in a room in the building, watching it live.
I don't know if she was sleeping in the Oshawa Creek. I don't know that for a fact.
I do.
Okay.
Not more than 300 meters away from my house.
During the interview, Adam Strong would finally acknowledge that he knew Rory.
But every time you seen her coming to my house, you would see her leaving. Where was her last confirmed sighting?
I'll tell you.
That's why I
I'll
asked.
tell you. I'm here to share the case. We got her on video near the emergency doors at the hospital.
Really?
In Oshawa, yeah. August 30th.
Okay.
Security footage now placed Rory at Oshawa's Lakeridge Health Hospital on the night of August the 30th. A nurse said she'd turned up asking for a prescription, but left before seeing a doctor.
I know you said you saw her and you knew she was living down by the creek. I don't know if you knew her prior to that, or you just met her for the first time, and she ends up back at your place. I don't know that. Things that I
want to know?
Yeah, things I want to know. Obviously, she got back to your place at some point. So we obviously ended up with Rory dead.
Apparently.
Well,
She's definitely deceased.
Yes.
Yes.
And you clearly have said, and I disposed of her.
Yes.
You're holding your cards about how you got her to the lake, which I don't know what...
What difference does it make?
Detective Paul Mitten kept probing for answers, trying to piece together the timeline between Rory's torso being discovered on September the 11th until the call from the plumber in late December.
So Rory's torso pops up on the 11th, and I think you said it was Christmas Eve that you spent. And is that when you started?
Started
dissecting the flesh off the bones and flushing?
Flushing, yes. She took up a lot of room in my freezer, yes.
Sure.
You know, I was sitting down in my basement after the plumbers left, and I was like, am I going to get away with this? I don't know. Should I leave now?
Okay.
Like, there's no way of getting around that I chopped her up. There's no way.
And what were you going to do with the bone?
I would have pitched it out in the lake.
Is it safe to assume as an investigator that Candace
I can't go into that.
was similar?
I can't go into that.
How did you meet Candace?
Getting him to admit that he knew her was a big step for court.
You know what? So long ago, I have no idea.
Did Do you remember if you met her like more than once, or was it just one time you met her?
Sorry, because every time she came to my house, she left my house. Under her own power.
Candace?
Both.
The Wyoming knife, when that came up during the interview,
I'm pretty sure I have an idea of the objects that were had her DNA on it. How's that sound?
to have Adam tell us what it was, where it was, and what he should have did with it to avoid that charge was a huge part of the outcome on Candace's trial.
Given the fact that we're gonna assume because of tissue found on that knife, the gutting knife that came back as Candace's, why not use that on Rory?
Didn't even think of it.
Because her DNA wasn't found.
Didn't even think of it.
Okay.
Didn't even remember I had it.
I can't see. I'm trying to picture a tool like that.
Skipping your mind?
Darren Short, when I interviewed him, said the fact that he kept that knife all those years, that was a mistake.
Huge. You got to remember, Candace was killed 10 years earlier than this, so there was very little evidence for Candace. It was just because he was a procrastinator, a piece of crap, that they found her DNA on that hunting knife and her blood in the freezer.
I'm a real bad procrastinator, and that is really a detriment to myself. Definitely me over.
Would there be any possibility that something could be recovered of Candace's remains?
I can't say that.
Based on Rory's fate and where she ended up, I would assume it worked in the past for you. And, again, assumptions get me nowhere. I'm just hypothesizing with you. So I would assume that Candace has had a watery end as well.
I can't.
No, I mean, logic tells me if it worked before, why would you change?
Shouldn't they have found her then?
I knew going into the trial, we had a lot of evidence for Rory. I was concerned about the lack of evidence we had in relation to Candace.
They had one shot at this, so they had to make sure everything lined up 100%, because if they didn't get the conviction, he walks, that's it. He's free.
Coming up, the disturbing details revealed at trial. That's next. Almost 3 years have passed, and the families of Rory Hache and Candace Fitzpatrick now head to trial to face the man accused of killing the two Oshawa teenagers. We return now to the conclusion of Innocent Blood.
A very emotional day here at day one of the trial for the man accused of killing two teenage girls 9 years apart. The double murder trial began in September 2020. That was the first time that both families came together, opening day of this trial.
To see Candace's family, you know, there every day, you know, it was a very bonding moment, because you're all alone. You're all alone in your grief.
Adam Strong pleaded not guilty to both first-degree murder charges, and his lawyers requested a judge-alone trial, no jury. Prosecutors agreed in exchange for Adam Strong waiving his right to have two separate trials. The Crown says it will prove a number of significant similarities between Rory and Candace. Both were vulnerable young women with no fixed address who were essentially homeless. Both used drugs and worked in the sex trade industry. In their search of Adam Strong's apartment, police had found blood splatter on the bedroom walls and ceiling. They had also discovered sex toys and an air mattress on which they detected blood. An autopsy found semen on Rory's remains, and blood evidence would support the conclusion that Rory was wearing a restraint device at the time of her death.
She just wasn't that girl. She wasn't that girl. So she ended up in that position. Somebody had to have encouraged it or assisted in that, because that wasn't my girl.
Worse than your worst fears.
Absolutely, and as time went on, it just got worse.
Very vulnerable, which I think is what Adam Strong was looking for. I think that played a huge part of how he came into contact with him, was their vulnerableness.
And they left my apartment when? Like, took all their out?
While Adam Strong maintained that he did not kill the two women, his lawyers conceded that he did dismember them.
It was like being defleshed myself at that time. For me, what the more morbid angle of it all is, Catherine, is whether she was dead or alive while this was going on, you know? To me, that's what's hard for me to live with, you know, because, you know, I hear her every day in my head calling for my help, every day.
Even right to the last day of her life, her mother was her best friend, and I'm completely confident that she screamed for her.
But there would have been no one around to hear her scream. The upstairs apartment was vacant at the time.
Tell me about the days that were tough, because I know it was tough.
There were days like where they would talk about the knife and Candace's blood in the freezer, you know, witness after witness after witness. And that was, kept showing the knife was a little rough, but other than that, I mean, no. I just wanted to see this guy get put away.
Adam Strong never testified in his own defense, but during his second police interview, he revealed that, quote, "I don't think I would have made those actions had I been nurtured. It was a really bad childhood."
That's not an excuse. A lot of people grew up in worse childhoods than that. They didn't grow up murdering young girls.
Adam Strong has been found guilty of first-degree murder and manslaughter in a case that horrified families of the victims and those who have been following the developments.
Catherine McDonald is at the Oshawa courthouse with the reasons for the verdict and the reaction. Catherine.
Well, Alan, there is bittersweet reaction to today's verdict. Justice Joseph DeLuca finding Adam Strong guilty of the first-degree murder of Rory Hache, but acquitting him of the murder of Candace Fitzpatrick, instead finding him guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter. In his decision, Justice Joseph DeLuca found that Adam Strong sexually assaulted and murdered Rory Hache, likely in his bedroom, and likely a few days after Rory was last seen in Memorial Park and captured on the hospital security video. The judge stated that she died of blunt force trauma to her head, likely from a hammer or a similar tool, and he rejected the suggestion that Rory died of a drug overdose. But when it came to Candace Fitzpatrick's case, Justice DeLuca said because Candace's body was never recovered, while it was possible she met the same fate, he was not satisfied beyond a reasonable doubt that she was murdered, saying only that it was clear the accused unlawfully caused her death.
I was anticipating it. I'm just satisfied that he'll never hurt anybody again. That's all that matters. You know, we can't bring Rory or Candace back, but we can protect other girls by keeping him locked up.
Did Adam ever say anything to you, communicate with you, ever
No.
look at you?
I understand that my condolences doesn't mean but it's something I think I should say
To
Rory's mother, yeah. And her father.
The only thing I can, again, hypothesize about why you would want to pass on condolences to Rory's mom and dad but not Candace's is if you had some sort of, there was some care or some feelings for Rory that weren't there for Candace, and that you have some sort of remorse for, no?
I feel bad that I got caught.
Ultimately, the judge said why Adam Strong killed these young women did not matter. Motive is not part of the offense.
Guilty. Just hearing guilty on the first degree and guilty on the manslaughter. Those are the words I want to hear after an investigation like this. You always remember those words.
The 48-year-old was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years for the murder of Rory, to be served concurrently with an 18-year sentence for the manslaughter of Candace.
It's Candace's day, and Rory's day. It's both their day, really. You know, they've each had their time. Finally, they can both rest in peace.
There's no closure. You can't hear what we've had to hear about our girls, and get past that. If I could have one more minute with her, I would tell her everything I didn't tell her enough while she was here. You know, how beautiful she was, how smart and strong she was, what a kick-ass girl she was.
Rory definitely was on the right path to overcoming some of her problems.
That drug-filled world is the one that she got caught up in.
She got caught up in it.
And so did Candace.
Yeah.
And
it's easy, right?
And you see it still.
Yep.
And do you worry for those kids?
I do. I really hope that the city of Oshawa gets it together and they start honing in on this, because it will swallow that city and it will take all of our kids with it. Adam Strong is the worst case scenario. He is worse than the worst scenario. But if there's one Adam, there's another one somewhere.
One of the things we talked about, we heard outside the trial a lot, was it took Rory to bring Candace home.
No. I'm tired of hearing that.
But at the end of the day, if he hadn't been caught, if Rory had not come up on...
What brought Candace home was a complacent murderer. He was complacent with what he did. He figured he got away with Candace, he's going to get away with Rory. There's more. There's before Candace, there's another one. Guaranteed. I truly believe there's another one before Candace.
Do you think police will ever find that victim?
No.
As of right now,
Adam Strong did not talk about there being other victims, but at one point suggested that he was not seeking the notoriety of being a serial killer.
How could it just be two?
The thoughts crossed my mind. I know when I retired, there was no evidence to suggest there are other victims. But common sense would dictate what you do in 2008. You don't maybe wait until 2017.
But Durham police will continue to keep that file open just in case, I'm sure.
Yes. Yes, they will.
I'm still holding my breath. I'm still just waiting. And I know that the appeal timeline is up, so that part makes me feel a little bit better, but I always feel like there's a rebuttal coming, you know? But right now, I miss her, and I miss her for everybody. I miss her for Shannon, I miss her for her aunts, I miss her for her uncles, I miss her for everyone. I miss her for myself. It's so easy to get lost in the narrative that's been provided. You know, oh, these were prostitute, drug addict girls, but that's not the case. It's, we had a kid that had an education. She was a cadet. She was like an active member of her community. Drugs took her the last year of her life down a rabbit hole. And it can happen to anyone's kid.
And how do you want her remembered?
As a young, innocent girl. As my daughter. An amazing kid. She had a heart of gold. She loved her younger sisters and brother.
And she's part of your family. You still talk about her all the time with the kids.
Always talk about her. Well, somebody had asked me one time, do you know that Candace girl? I said, yeah, she's my daughter. I didn't say she was my daughter. I said she is my daughter.
She's still your daughter.
She always will be.
I've got 3 daughters. One would have been the exact age of Rory and Candace. But you do your job. That's why I've always, on my desk, kept pictures of each case I had. I always kept a picture of the victim on the case to remind me every morning why we're there doing what we're doing. And I had a picture of Candace, I had a picture of Rory.
She found the best in everything that was wrong. In all the faults that you could find in others, she'd find the good. She had so many wonderful qualities, and I'm going to remember them the rest of my life because they help. They help.
I just hope they're both at peace. I hope they're both at peace.
Adam Strong is now serving his concurrent sentence. He will not be eligible for parole until December 29, 2042, 25 years after he was arrested. I'm Anthony Robart. Thank you for joining us tonight on Crime Beat. Want more episodes of Crime Beat? Listen to the Crime Beat podcast now for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And for past episodes of Crime Beat, check out our YouTube page or download the Global Go app to watch on your phone.